with David Donaldson from Medi-Care DNA, and we're talking DNA. But first off, what is DNA?
Basically, the DNA is your body's own set of keys. Really, it's a network of what makes you you, and it is unique to you.
So everybody's DNA is different, and that's why you see it on all the TV programs.
Absolutely, yeah. Everybody's different. Everybody's complete. Is that your DNA setup is completely unique to you.
Okay, now Medi-Care DNA are doing DNA testing. Now, once again, is this anything like you see on all the American police shows? You know, what are you actually testing for?
We're doing medical DNA testing, which looks at the various areas of your health. So it looks at your vitamin absorption, what correct foods you should be eating, what medications work for you, what predisposition you have to certain diseases. It looks at the whole bigger picture. I think what you need to understand with DNA that is in the next 5 or 6 years, it's quite likely that we won't do blood tests anymore. We'll actually look at your DNA to work out what's actually happening in your body and what you need. So medical science is really advanced in terms of how it understands the DNA and what it can do. So it's actually, the great thing about it is that all standard blood tests that we do we have standard ranges that are within the normal range. Whereas with DNA, it is specifically to you rather than a general overview. It's a very specific way of looking at a person.
So you take a blood sample. Is there anything else that you have to do?
So for this particular test, what we do is we take a saliva swab from the mouth and we take a blood sample. So and both of those are analysed, and the result is a 14-page Informe, a report, which looks at all of those different aspects. So it looks at the way that your body absorbs food, whether you have what we call the fat gene, whether you're predisposed to gaining weight. It looks at how your body absorbs vitamins and whether you've got any lack of those. It looks at the way your body deals with things like paracetamol, ibuprofen, different types of drug groups, and you can actually specify 2 drugs that if you're taking medications, you can actually specify to be tested for those particular drugs. It looks at what exercise your body needs, which it responds best to. It looks at which of the 5 main chronic disease groups as to which one of those you're predisposed to, so you can make the changes before those diseases become an issue.
That sounds like a really in-depth document. I mean, do you need medical training to read it?
No, it's actually that it's done by a lab. Obviously, the sample's analysed by a lab, and obviously the actual report is formulated by clinical nutrition. So it is a doctor of nutrition that actually formulates the report based on the information that's given by the lab.
And then you get that report, and I guess it's up to you then what you do with it. Yeah,
I mean, the point of it is what you've got to do is if you're going to have that information, you've got to use it to your advantage. So if you're one of those people, I mean, today in the Spanish news, they've said that 1 in 3 people in Spain are now morbidly obese. So if you're one of those people that's really struggling, that's tried lots of different diets, this is really good because it's actually really specific to you. Or if you're just feeling generally unwell, again, it's really good because it pinpoints all these areas. It tells you what changes you need to make. The report's really informative. The big challenge for all of us is actually making those changes and actually keeping those changes active in our lives.
So do you have to use any sort of meal supplements or anything like that?
No supplements at all. This is all about normal foods bought from the supermarket. But it's, we talk about things like being gluten-free or being dairy intolerant. This actually tells you whether you really are, rather than actually guessing at what it is that your body doesn't like. And the really interesting thing, I did mine for the first time about 1.5 years ago. And when I cheat and have foods that I shouldn't have that are not on my list, my body really tells me about it. I really know about it. So, and it's a really interesting process. So if you have it done and you follow it for 6 weeks, you'll notice all the really big changes. And then if you then introduce one of the foods on your list that says that your DNA says you shouldn't have, your body will actually deal with that and actually tell you that it doesn't like it.
Talking about things like that, like foods that your body doesn't work well with, shall we say. I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and this woman said, my friend had that, and she was told not to eat lettuce. How ridiculous is that? Well, it's not ridiculous, is it?
Actually, lettuce is one of those foods that's really interesting that I would say probably 70 or 80% of the reports that I translate, people can't have lettuce. And the thing is that we don't digest lettuce. It ferments in our gut.
Oh, right.
So it's not actually digested by us, which is why most people are intolerant of it. The other one is that, interestingly, sugar, beer, lettuce and tomatoes are probably the most common foods that most people shouldn't have.
Beer! No, not beer!
Yeah, that's why it's really difficult to implement the change. And one of the things that we do is we do the reports, but then we provide support for people. So the team are available to them to actually help them. And when they're really struggling with implementing the change, we can support them through that.
So if I wanted to have a test done, would I need to go to a medical centre or something like that?
We offer both. So the test is available from our clinic in Lecala. So you get a small consultation with one of the team, you have the samples taken, they take some medical information and then we send the results away, or the samples away for the results. Or we actually do it by post, exactly the same system, but you can buy the DNA package online, we send you the swabs, with all the instructions on how to take the samples, you send them back to us and then we send you the results, but we're still available to provide you with the support. So you have both options.
So basically you could do this anywhere in the world?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. At the moment it's available in Spanish and English, but as we move on we will expand that to different languages as well.
So what about medical people? I mean, doctors and things like this. If you, or say I went and had a DNA test, would my doctor then sort of be okay with that?
Absolutely. I mean, we work with a GP locally who actually has a DNA lab in his practice. So, and quite often will actually do a DNA profile on medications before he prescribes. So, for example, if you're newly diagnosed with epilepsy, rather than just give you a medication and see what kind of response you get, he'll profile your DNA against 14 different medications and then choose the most appropriate one for you. And that's becoming much more common now in medical practice.
Now, DNA testing isn't that new, really. I mean, it's something that's been around for ages. But it's not just a new trendy thing, is it?
No, not at all. This is about us actually understanding the human body in much more detail, and even to the point now that the part of the DNA that deals with the aging process, they now know how to actually reprogram that. So potentially they have the science to make us live forever.
Oh no!
No, yeah, I know, absolutely. But they really do understand the DNA and its importance in keeping people well, and dealing with or getting people to avoid chronic diseases or being overweight and taking the wrong medications. It's a really, really exciting time in medicine.
Do you need to have it done frequently, say every year or something like that?
Not at all, no. It's you have it done, and what we say to people is that after 12 months you can start reintroducing the foods that your body was intolerant to and then listen to your body to see how it responds. If you get a negative response, then continue to avoid those foods, but if you get a positive response you can reintroduce them.
Right, so it's not terminal. If you can't eat beef, for instance, it's not a case you can't eat beef forever.
Potentially not, no. Potentially you can. In some cases, like for me, I'm completely intolerant to wheat. And even 16 months on, if I try to reintroduce wheat into my diet, my body responds. So I don't have wheat. So yeah, I mean, some people can reintroduce foods in time and some people can't.
Do you have to work this with sort of like exercise and all those sort of things?
That's the beauty of the test, is the results or the Informe will actually tell you what kind of exercise you need to do.
Right, so it might not be necessary for you to go down the gym every day and lift 700 kilos or something.
No, and that's the reality, is that it will actually specify in the report what type of exercise is best for you, whether it's gym work, just walking, whether you need to do it for longer periods of time because the benefit comes at the end. It actually explains all of that for you. Can
people be... I mean, we go to the doctors and the doctor gives us pills, or we get a headache and say, take an ibuprofen or something like that. Can you actually be totally intolerant to that?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we take things like paracetamol or ibuprofen, which is part of a group of particular type of drugs, aspirin.
Yeah.
Aspirin was always the wonder drug, and we give it to everybody to avoid cardiac disease. And now they realise that in people over the age of 75, it has no benefit.
Really?
Yeah. So medications are not exact science.
Yeah.
So, and we all respond to them differently. A really good example, which everybody we're aware of, is Nolotil. This painkiller that's used in Spain very widely, but those of us from Northern Europe don't tolerate it. And it's actually really quite dangerous, which is why it's now been stopped and we can't give it to Northern Europeans. But the Mediterranean Europeans tolerate it really well. So, and I think that's a really good example of how we are all very, very different. So, some people tolerate paracetamol very well and other people don't tolerate it at all. But it gives you the information so you can make those changes.
So if somebody is diagnosed, is in the report as, say, not having a good tolerance to a particular food, is it sort of, do you have like a traffic light effect? Green, red?
That's exactly how it works. So what you have is green, yellow and red.
Yeah.
So the green foods you can eat as much as you like of. The yellow foods you should limit to once a week or once a fortnight, and the red foods you should avoid completely.
Do you find that people are able to live like that? Because sometimes with foods, the things that you can eat are the stuff you don't really like the taste of, and the things you can't eat are the things you really love.
Yeah, what it actually requires is some imagination. So, for example, if you're completely dairy intolerant, and quite often the one thing I'll hear is, but I love cheese.
Yeah.
Well, there's actually some really good substitutes out there. So there's a cheddar cheese that's made from coconut.
Oh, right.
And it actually is really good. So, if you're intolerant to wheat, then look at some of the alternatives. And there are some really good alternatives. So what we say to everybody is give it 6 weeks. Try it for 6 weeks and then come back to us and say whether you feel better or not. And the amazing thing that we found since we launched this in the clinic is that the feedback we get is so positive. And people really notice the benefits and therefore are actually prepared to make those sacrifices.
What about weight loss? Can you use it for weight loss as well?
It's a really effective tool. At the end of the day, you're feeding your body exactly what it needs. So, you will naturally lose weight from it without actually being on a diet.
And therefore, it's obviously a lot more healthy for you.
Absolutely, yeah, because you're actually giving your body exactly what it needs, rather than trying different things, going with different fads, and thinking, well, this might be right for me, this might not be.
So many people have done diets where you buy into a particular product and you use that instead of a meal or something like that. And then after sort of 3 or 4 months, they turn around and go, well, it didn't work for me.
But the thing is, it's all about commitment. So, to any of these things, whether you're dieting and you're doing the latest carb-free keto or whatever it is that you're doing, you've got to be committed to it. And it's exactly the same with the DNA. The big difference is this is very specific to you. No 2 reports are the same. So everybody has a very unique DNA. Everybody's report will be very unique to them. And the report is actually, it's giving you very specific advice about you as an individual.
So basically what it boils down to is a simple blood test, saliva test, and then working the plan.
Absolutely, and it's not a blood test as in taking blood from a vein. It's actually a blood test as if you were diabetic and pricking your finger and giving us a blood sample. So it's a small needle, it's not a big needle.
Thank God for that. Now you mentioned something just then, diabetes and things like that. Can DNA testing actually show that?
So when we look at your predisposition to disease, it will actually indicate whether you are predisposed to diabetes. So it's one of the groups of the 5 sort of chronic diseases that we have in society. It's one of the things that it looks at. So diseases of the endocrine system.
Do you think it's possible at the end of the day that DNA testing could get rid of a lot of drugs?
I think what it will end up doing is actually it will mean that we will prescribe more drugs on a more specific basis that are right for the person. So, and what happens a lot with managing chronic diseases is that we give the medication to deal with the chronic disease, and then we have to give additional medications to deal with the side effects of the original medication. So I think this will actually allow us to prescribe very specifically for an individual rather than actually prescribing in a more broad spectrum way.
Okay, one more question. Okay, if somebody does take the test and they do find they're intolerant to certain foods, you can support them through any time that they may sort of, oh, I really fancy that.
Absolutely, because the reality is that change is a really difficult thing for humans to deal with. We're not very good at implementing change, and one of the things we've learned is that we need to be supported through that change. So the team are available to support people.
More information, if you want to read, is available on the internet, yeah?
Absolutely. So Medicare-DNA.com. Visit the website, all the information's there, or give us a call on 952 835 776 and we'll tell you all about it.
And that's, I'm just going to put this in, that is available whether you're in the UK or whether you're in Spain, wherever you are in the world. Just give it a go. I know I'm going to.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, David. Cheers.